Q4 for fast-growing e-commerce companies can literally make or break your year. Brands that do in-house fulfillment and are fast-growing e-commerce companies, then you know this is the most stressful time in the year. There is no more stressful time than Q4. If you mess up one variable, it can be the difference in millions of dollars of sales and profit. I lost my e-commerce company $1 million in sales in Q4 by not being properly prepared. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Here are some tips to make sure you can actually make an extra $1 million in Q4. So let's go over these variables that you should care about, and we'll give you some tips and tricks to make sure that everything is dialed this Q4. Number 1, purchasing. So first off, it's already too late to purchase for Q4 if you're trying to optimize for best cost. But here's what we did at my previous company, and I hope it helps you in some way. Number 1, we had really hot selling cutting boards and glasses that we could never really predict how many we were going to sell in Q4. On our hot sellers, we would always just try to purchase at least 10 to 20% over our projected sales for our cost-effective purchases from China. So what do I mean by cost-effective purchasing? This is just the high volume production at the most optimal time of the year for material cost and sea freight. In other words, it's buying the cheapest you possibly can from China at the right time. For a fast-growing e-commerce company who can't predict sales like a massive freaking conglomerate like Walmart or Target or Home Depot, it's better just to slightly be overstocked on your best sellers than understocked. Number 2, set aside time in your year to set up your US supply chain. Back to the first example of cutting boards and glasses at my old e-commerce company. We always made sure that we had 2 to 3 sources that could manufacture these goods in the United States. It's a simple lead time issue with US supply chain. So cutting board X from China costs $3. The lead time is 70 days from the time I put down the deposit and I sell it for $29.99. Much better margins when you can get it most cost-effective from China. If I run out of China stock and I have a US cutting board for $8, but I have a 7-day lead time, that sells for $29.99. Less margin, but at least I don't run out of stock, which is the most important in Q4. You'd be surprised how many operators just don't even look into US inventory because there's such a disparity between the China price and the United States price. Go look, go try, at least see what's out there. You'd be surprised what things you can manufacture in the United States. Number 3, what if you buy too late and international sources are your only option right now? It's common to ship a portion of your PO via air freight to decrease the lead time and send the rest overseas. So if this has happened to you and you need to buy something from China but get it here fast, it's actually really common just to ship a portion of your PO via air freight to decrease the lead time and send the rest overseas. A good example of how this works is a similar example above. So I'll give you something. China air freight plus my unit cost on the cutting board is $5.50 with a 25-day lead time by air. China sea freight plus my unit cost is $2.50 with a 65-day lead time. So what I would do is order 10,000 units, ship 3,000 by air in time for our Q4 sales. Then I would expect the 7,000 remaining to arrive 30 to 40 days later when sales were really starting to ramp up. Number 2, financing. If you're a fast-growing e-commerce company, then you also know that typically your sales lull and cash lull is right when you need cash in the bank for the Q4 purchases. We knew this all too well. At least that's how it was for our business. So we would start purchasing for Q4 in Q2 when we typically had less money in the bank. There was one year that it was so bad. Like we literally had no money for our Q4 purchasing. Our credit cards were maxed out. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. We'll get into that later. Irregardless, tons of e-commerce companies run into this same problem. Here are some tips when you're running into cash flow issues for your Q4 purchases. There's actually a lot of financing options out there. Short-term bank loans, PO financing, solutions out there like Brex, a tech company that will help loan money to you for e-commerce companies. One thing that I took advantage of because of my background in sourcing and manufacturing was using my connections in China. So here's the thing, most people have never challenged their factory's 30/70 payment terms. If you've done business with them for years and years and you've paid them on time and you've been a good partner, you'd be surprised how willing they are to let you negotiate that. Not only did I go and negotiate paid on delivery terms for these Q4 orders when we were having cash issues, but I also went to a couple trading companies in China that I had done tons of business with before, and they financed my purchase orders directly from the factory so that I wouldn't have to do their 30/70 payment terms. And all it did was added 2 to 3% markup on the cost of goods. I was totally fine with that. It solved my cash issues. I could get the goods in manufacturing and I got them in time, cost effective for Q4, selling at my highest margins. Number 3, labor. If you do in-house fulfillment, holy shit. Just to put things into perspective, the e-commerce company that I was CEO of would go from about 40 to 60 employees to like 200 in Q4. It was a madhouse. So 2 things I learned. Number 1, you need a reliable temp labor solution where you can quickly and easily get reliable people. We've used people like Bacon Work, and there are other companies out there like Variable that do this exact thing. The problem to be aware of is that you will get pretty sketchy people as temp laborers. We once caught a temp laborer on camera injecting drugs into his vein in the break room. When we confronted him, we had to call the cops. There are plenty more stories that I could share than this on temp laborers, but suffice it to say, it's just going to be difficult to acquire temp labor that is good. Number 2, your temp laborers are only as good as your SOPs and your freaking software. Simply put, if you don't use pick, pack, ship modules in your inventory software and you don't have clear, easy to use, easy to understand SOPs, you can't really get mad at your temp laborers for not picking things up quickly. Come up with clear written SOPs and implement a damn inventory system that digitizes this flow and this process. It's worth it in Q4, trust me. Number 4, and most importantly, the intersection of ops and marketing. This is a tough one. There's always that conversation going on where the marketing person will say, if only those damn ops people could get stuff out the door, I'd be able to sell more. And then there's the ops people saying, those freaking marketers aren't communicating things correctly to the customers. Here are 3 tips to improve the intersection between ops and marketing. Number 1, marketers, just shut up. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. But seriously, number 1, ops, nail down your cutoff dates for all of your services. Prep this really early. What do I mean by this? Every company should know their cutoff dates on what shipping carrier methods will get the product to the customer in time for Christmas. This is a dynamic conversation between ops and marketing and should be communicated in a crystal clear way to the customer. If your discount delivery date cutoff, for example, is December 19th, then your freaking website better warn the customer at checkout that if they choose this option, it will not get there in time for Christmas. You'd be surprised how often this miscommunication happens, and it's a customer service nightmare. Number 2, inventory audits. As difficult as this is, make sure your inventory is audited during Q4. You're specifically looking out for the things that are going out of stock that for some reason weren't caught in your inventory system. It just happens. And when something is sold to your customers when it's actually out of stock, it's a customer service issue, yes, and you just also overspent on advertising. It's a lot of lost money and it damages your brand. Stay on top of your inventory management numbers and your actual numbers. Number 3, marketing for Q4 actually starts way before Q4. Believe it or not, your ad campaigns for Q4 sale should be starting in Q3. You don't just dial up your spend to a 10 the week before Black Friday. Just like purchasing, this is a conversation that should have happened like Q2, Q1. Number 5, and finally, guys, you just won't be perfect, and that's okay. You will underpurchase on something, and you will overpurchase on some things. It just happens. Just do the things that I listed above to mitigate your risk. Just don't be the that yells at your purchaser who in no way could have predicted the anomaly of a random SKU popping off. I'll leave you with some advice from the COO of ThreadWallets, Mitch Sanders, on my most recent podcast, Ops Unfiltered. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this was helpful in some way. Go and have a great Q4. Peace.